The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday afternoon, turning the sidewalks of downtown Manhattan into rivers of reflected neon and regret. Elena Martinez stood in the marble lobby of the Grandview Hotel, her 2-year-old son balanced on her hip, his small fingers clutching the collar of her rain-soaked jacket. Water dripped from her hair, pooling on the expensive floor beneath her feet, and she could feel the weight of her desperation in every breath. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind during sleepless nights. She'd practiced her words in the mirror while her son napped, tried on different tones, angry, hurt, pleading, cold. But now that she was here, actually standing 15 feet away from Nathan Castellan, the words caught in her throat like broken glass. Nathan stood surrounded by colleagues in expensive suits that probably cost more than Elena's rent. He was laughing at something someone said, his hand resting casually on the shoulder of a woman Elena didn't recognize. Tall, blonde, perfect in the way that made Elena painfully aware of her own soaked thrift store coat and scuffed boots. He looked exactly as he had 3 years ago when he'd whispered promises into her ear at that gallery opening. Polished, confident, untouchable. Except now, there was a hardness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Success, Elena thought bitterly, or maybe just 3 years of pretending certain mistakes had never happened. Nathan. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, swallowed by the acoustics of the vast lobby and the murmur of business deals being made all around them. He turned, and for a split second, less than a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe even fear, but it vanished so quickly Elena wondered if she'd imagined it. His eyes went cold and blank, like looking at a stranger wearing Nathan's face. "Can I help you?" His tone was ice wrapped in politeness, the voice of a man addressing an inconvenient interruption. The colleagues fell silent, watching. The blonde woman beside Nathan raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Elena felt her son stir against her chest, pressing his face into her neck the way he did when he sensed something was wrong. She could feel the weight of all those eyes on her, judging, dismissing, calculating how quickly security could escort her out. The security guard near the entrance had already shifted his stance, one hand moving toward his radio. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd known this would be hard. But she hadn't expected this. The complete erasure, the way Nathan looked at her like she was nothing more than an unfortunate stranger who'd wandered in from the rain. "I thought you'd want to know," she said, forcing her voice to steady. "He's starting preschool next month. Little Scholars Academy, the one with the STEM program. I thought, maybe you'd want to be part of that. Maybe you'd want to know that your son is smart. He counts to 20 now. That he's obsessed with dinosaurs and he can name 12 different species." Her son lifted his head at the word dinosaurs, his eyes bright despite the tension. "T-Rex," he announced proudly, not understanding the loaded silence around him. Nathan's jaw tightened. One of his colleagues cleared their throat uncomfortably. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on Elena's chest until she could barely breathe. The blonde woman leaned in and whispered something to Nathan, her expression shifting from curiosity to disdain. Then Nathan laughed. It was a short, bitter sound that made Elena's stomach drop to the floor. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Loud enough to make sure there were witnesses to his denial. "I've never seen this woman before in my life. This is clearly some kind of scam or—" "Nathan, please." "Security." Nathan raised his hand, signaling to the guard. "I think this woman needs to be escorted out before she disturbs any more guests." The lobby seemed to tilt. Elena felt her son's grip tighten on her jacket, heard his small voice ask, "Mama? Home now." She wanted to scream. Wanted to rage and cry and demand that all these well-dressed people see Nathan for what he really was, a coward who could deny his own child without even blinking. But the security guard was already moving toward her, and Elena's courage was crumbling, and she was so tired of fighting alone. That's when she heard it, the sound of measured footsteps behind her, confident and unhurried, cutting through her despair like a lifeline. Elena! The voice was familiar, warm, solid. The voice that had talked her through panic attacks at 3 a.m. and taught her that she wasn't alone. The voice that had been her anchor for the past 3 years. She turned to find Marcus Thornfield standing there, water dripping from his charcoal Tom Ford suit, his dark eyes fixed on Nathan with an intensity that made the air feel electric. He must have followed her here, Elena realized. Must have known she'd try to do this alone, must have parked outside and waited in the rain just in case she needed him. Because that's what Marcus did. He showed up. Marcus reached out without a word, and Elena's son immediately lifted his arms toward him with the absolute trust of a child who knows he's safe. "Dada," the little boy said, and Marcus lifted him effortlessly, settling him against his chest with practiced ease. The boy wrapped his arms around Marcus's neck and lay his head on his shoulder, perfectly content. Nathan's face drained of color. The colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances. The blonde woman took a small step back, suddenly uncertain. Marcus didn't rush. He took his time adjusting his grip on the child, making sure he was comfortable before finally looking up at Nathan. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent lobby like a blade cutting through silk. "You never claimed him," Marcus said, each word deliberate and weighted. "So don't you dare touch my son now." The security guard stopped mid-stride, suddenly unsure of his orders. One of Nathan's colleagues coughed and excused himself, not wanting to be part of whatever was about to happen. The lobby, which had been full of background noise and movement just moments ago, had gone deathly still. Nathan found his voice, though it came out higher than usual. "This doesn't concern you, whoever you are." "Whoever am I?" Marcus's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm Marcus Thornfield, CEO of Thornfield Industries. Perhaps you've heard of us. We're valued at about $12 billion these days. Last quarter, we acquired 3 of your father's competitors. But more importantly," he shifted the boy in his arms, his expression softening as he looked at the child's face. "I'm the man who's been this boy's father since before he was born." "That's not," Nathan started, but Marcus cut him off. "I was there when Elena couldn't breathe through the contractions. I was there when he was born at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with his mother's eyes and a scream that could wake the dead. I was there for his first smile, his first laugh, his first word." Marcus's gaze returned to Nathan, harder now. "Where were you?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Nathan opened his mouth, closed it again. The blonde woman had taken another step away, clearly wanting to distance herself from whatever scandal this was turning into. We weren't, it was complicated," Nathan stammered. "No," Elena said, finding her voice again. Marcus's presence had given her back her strength, reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. "It wasn't complicated at all. I called you 17 times. You answered once, told me I was on my own, and then you blocked my number. That's not complicated. That's just cowardice. You can't just come into my workplace and—" "Your workplace." Marcus's voice dropped even lower, more dangerous. "You want to talk about workplaces? Let's talk about how Castellan Media's stock dropped 8% last month. How your father's been looking for someone to blame for the botched streaming platform launch. How precarious your position really is." Nathan went pale. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything about you, Nathan. I've known for 3 years. Known where you work, where you live, who you're dating, what deals you're trying to close. I know about the gambling debts you haven't told your father about. I know about the DUI that his lawyers made disappear. I know exactly what kind of man you are. Marcus took a step forward, and despite being several inches shorter than Nathan, he somehow seemed to tower over him. And I've been waiting for you to do the right thing. Waiting for you to be a man and take responsibility. But you never did you? What do you want? Nathan's voice was barely a whisper now. I want you to look at him, Marcus said, turning slightly so Nathan had a clear view of the child's face. Really look at him. Because this is your last chance to see what you walked away from. The boy, sensing the attention, lifted his head from Marcus's shoulder. He looked at Nathan with the solemn curiosity of a child encountering someone new. His eyes, Elena's eyes, just as Marcus had said, studied Nathan's face for a long moment. Then he turned away, disinterested, and buried his face back in Marcus's neck. Home, Dada, he said softly. Wanna go home? Okay, buddy, Marcus murmured, rubbing the boy's back. We're going home. He looked at Elena, his expression gentle. Ready? Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Marcus offered her his free hand, and she took it, letting him anchor her. They turned to leave, and that's when Nathan found his voice again. Wait. But Marcus didn't stop. Over his shoulder, he said, If you have anything to say, have your lawyer contact mine. But I'm warning you now, Nathan, if you come after my family, you'll discover exactly how ruthless a man can be when he's protecting the people he loves. The automatic doors opened, and they stepped out into the rain. Marcus had a car waiting, of course, he did, and his driver immediately appeared with an umbrella, shielding them from the downpour. As they settled into the back seat, Elena's son safely buckled between them. Elena finally let herself breathe. You followed me. Of course I followed you, Marcus said, taking her hand again. You think I'd let you face him alone? I thought I could handle it. I know you could have. But you don't have to handle everything alone anymore. When are you going to accept that? Elena looked at him. This man who'd come into her life when she was at her lowest point, who'd stayed when he had every reason to leave, who'd claimed a child that wasn't his by blood but was his in every way that mattered. And she wondered, not for the first time, what she'd done to deserve him. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus squeezed her hand. Always. As the car pulled away from the Grandview Hotel, Elena looked back through the rain-streaked window. She could see Nathan still standing in the lobby, looking lost and small despite his expensive suit and his father's money. For a moment, just a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Because Nathan had no idea what he'd lost. No idea what it meant to have a family, to have someone who showed up, to have love that didn't fade when things got hard. And he never would. But how did Marcus and Elena's story really begin? And what secrets is Marcus keeping about his own past? The first time Elena Martinez met Nathan Castellan, she believed in fairy tales. She was 26 years old, working 2 jobs, freelance graphic design during the day and hostessing at an upscale restaurant 3 nights a week, trying to save enough money to maybe, possibly, someday afford her own design studio. She was tired. She was broke. But she was also young enough to still believe that meeting the right person could change everything. The gallery opening was in Soho, one of those trendy spaces where the art was expensive and the wine was free. Elena had only come because her friend Mia worked there and had begged her to stop by. You need to get out more, Mia had said. You need to meet people. Live a little. Nathan was standing in front of an abstract painting that cost more than Elena's annual income, champagne glass in hand, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tall, dark-haired, with that effortless confidence that came from never having to worry about money. When he turned and caught her staring, he'd smiled, the kind of smile that made her forget her own name. What do you think? He'd asked, gesturing to the painting. Elena should have been honest. Should have said she didn't understand abstract art, didn't move in these circles, was only there because her friend worked at the gallery. But Nathan was looking at her like she was the most interesting person in the room, and it had been so long since anyone had looked at her like that. "I think," she'd said carefully, "that it's either a profound statement about the chaos of modern existence, or the artist spilled their coffee and decided to go with it." Nathan had laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. "I'm Nathan." "Elena." "Let me buy you a drink, Elena." A real drink, not this gallery wine. That should have been her first warning. The way he said, "gallery wine," with just a hint of disdain, like he was used to better things. Like this world of free wine and people trying to network their way into success was beneath him. But Elena was 26 and tired and lonely, and Nathan's attention felt like sunshine after a long winter. For 6 months, Elena convinced herself she was living a dream. Nathan took her to restaurants where the waiters knew him by name. Bought her dresses she'd never have bought for herself. In shops where she was afraid to touch anything without checking the price tag first. Introduced her to his friends, other young professionals who talked about stock options and real estate investments like it were a foreign language Elena was still learning. "You're different from the women I usually date," Nathan had told her once, like it was a compliment. "You're real. Genuine. You haven't been corrupted by all of this yet." Elena had smiled, not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. What did he mean by corrupted? What did he mean by yet? But the sex was good, and Nathan could be charming when he wanted to be, and Elena was so tired of being alone that she pushed her doubts aside. Even when he'd take calls during dinner and spend 20 minutes discussing business while their food got cold. Even when he'd cancel plans last minute because something at work had come up. Even when she realized she'd told him everything about her life, her dreams, her fears, her past, but knew almost nothing about his beyond the surface level facts he offered up like gifts. The morning everything changed started like any other. Elena woke up in Nathan's apartment, a penthouse in Tribeca with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Nathan was already gone. She could hear the shower running in the bathroom. There was a note on the pillow. "Have a meeting this morning. Make yourself breakfast. See you tonight?" Elena had smiled at the note, tucking it into her purse. She was about to get up when the nausea hit her like a wave. She barely made it to the bathroom in time to throw up, and it was only as she knelt on the cold tile floor that the pieces clicked into place. She'd been tired. Emotional. Her period was late. Very late. Her hands shook as she texted Mia, "Need you to pick something up for me. Don't ask questions." 2 hours later, Elena sat on the edge of Nathan's bathtub, 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the marble counter like accusers. Her phone lay beside them, screen dark, displaying Nathan's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but she couldn't seem to press it. What would she say? How did you tell someone that everything was about to change? Was that the carefree relationship he enjoyed about to become something much more complicated? The bathroom door opened, and Nathan walked in, towel around his waist, already talking on his phone. He didn't notice Elena at first, didn't see the tests on the counter. "Yes, Dad, I understand the timeline, but the projections aren't Elena?" He finally saw her tear-stained face, saw the pregnancy tests. His expression went blank. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and hung up without waiting for a response. The silence stretched between them, heavy and terrible. "Nathan, Elena started, but her voice cracked. "Is it mine?" The question was flat, emotionless, and it felt like a slap. "Of course it's yours," Elena said, anger cutting through her fear. "How can you even ask that?" Nathan ran his hand through his damp hair, pacing the small bathroom like a caged animal. This is okay. We can handle this. There are options. Clinics. I can pay for it. I can pay for it." Elena stood up, her legs unsteady. Is that really the first thing you think of? What else am I supposed to think? Nathan's voice rose. Elena, we've been together 6 months. I'm 28 years old. I'm trying to establish my career, prove to my father that I can handle responsibility at the company. I can't. He stopped himself, but the words hung in the air anyway. I can't have a baby right now. So what are you saying? Nathan looked at her, and Elena saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear, yes, but also calculation. He was already working out the angles, figuring out how to minimize the damage to his life, his career, his carefully constructed image. I'm saying this isn't what I want, Nathan said finally. I'm not ready for this. We're not ready for this. Elena felt something cold settling in her chest. You mean you're not ready for this? Don't put words in my mouth. Then what are you saying, Nathan? Say it clearly so I understand. He met her eyes then, and Elena saw the truth before he spoke it. Saw the decision he'd already made, the door he was already closing. I'm saying I'm not ready to be a father. I'm saying this is your choice to make, but I can't be part of it. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. Elena stared at him, this man she'd thought she might love, this man who'd said she was different, that she was real. And she realized she'd been right to doubt those words. She was different, but only because she'd been willing to overlook his flaws, to forgive his selfishness, to believe that underneath the surface he was someone worth loving. So that's it, she said quietly. You're just done. I'll help you financially, Nathan said, already backing toward the door. For whatever you decide. Just let me know what you need. What do I need? Elena's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the room like a knife. What I need is for you to be a man. To step up. To tell me we'll figure this out together. But you can't do that, can you? Nathan didn't answer. He just grabbed his clothes and left the bathroom, leaving her standing there with her hands pressed against her still flat stomach, her whole world crumbling around her. She called him 17 times that day. He answered once. This isn't my problem, Nathan had said, his voice flat with a finality that left no room for argument. You're on your own. Then he blocked her number. Elena stood in the rain outside her apartment building. A 4th-floor walk-up in Queens with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who fought loudly at 2 a.m. She'd spent the last 3 weeks in a fog, going through the motions of her job while her mind spun in circles. The morning sickness was getting worse. She'd already missed 2 shifts at the restaurant because she couldn't be around food without feeling sick. Her freelance clients were complaining about delayed projects. Her savings account, never impressive to begin with, was dwindling fast. And she was so tired and so alone and so scared that she stood in the rain crying, not even bothering to go inside because the rain felt appropriate somehow, like the universe was crying with her. That's when she saw him for the first time. A black Mercedes pulled up across the street, and a man got out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent. He had an umbrella, and he was about to open it when he paused, his eyes landing on Elena. She expected him to look away. Rich men in expensive suits didn't stop for crying women in the rain. They had places to be, important things to do. They certainly didn't. He was crossing the street, walking directly toward her. You're going to catch pneumonia, he said, holding the umbrella over her head. His voice was deep, warm, with just a hint of concern that felt genuine rather than performative. Elena looked up at him through tear-blurred vision. He was older than Nathan, mid-30s, maybe, with dark eyes that held something she hadn't seen in Nathan's eyes even at the beginning. Kindness. Real, uncomplicated kindness. I didn't know who else to call, Elena whispered, and she wasn't even sure why she was telling this stranger anything. Maybe because his eyes held genuine concern. Maybe because she was so desperate for someone to care that she'd take it from anyone, even a stranger with an umbrella. The man studied her for a moment, and Elena saw his gaze drop briefly to her hand, pressed protectively over her stomach in a gesture she wasn't even aware of making. "Are you okay?" he asked, and the question was so simple, so direct, that Elena almost started crying again. "No," she said, surprising herself with her honesty. "No, I'm really not." He didn't ask for details. Didn't pry. Just reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her hand. "When you're ready," he said simply, "call me." Elena looked down at the card, rain-spotted and elegant. Marcus Thornfield, CO, Thornfield Industries. There was a phone number at the bottom, printed in raised gold lettering. "I don't understand," Elena said. "Why would you?" But when she looked up, he was already getting back into his car. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving Elena standing alone in the rain with a stranger's business card clutched in her hand and questions spinning through her mind. Why had he stopped? What did he want? And why did she feel like that brief encounter had meant something, though she couldn't quite say what? She tucked the card into her purse and finally went inside, climbing the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment, her mind already starting to calculate how many more weeks she could afford rent before she'd have to make some serious decisions. The business card stayed in her purse for 3 weeks. Elena told herself she'd throw it away. Told herself it was weird that a random stranger had given her his number, that nothing good could come from calling a man she didn't know. But every time she went to toss it in the trash, something stopped her. 3 weeks and 4 days after that encounter, Elena had her first appointment with an OB-GYN. The nurse had asked her to fill out paperwork, including an emergency contact who wasn't herself. Elena stared at the blank line for 10 minutes. She didn't have anyone. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 22. She had no siblings. Her few friends were scattered across the country, living their own lives, and she couldn't burden them with this. The blank lines stared back at her like an accusation of her own loneliness. That night, she pulled out the rain-spotted business card and, before she could talk herself out of it, dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. "Marcus Thornfield." Elena's voice caught. "You gave me your card. 3 weeks ago. In the rain. I'm not sure if you remember." "I remember," Marcus said, and Elena could hear genuine warmth in his voice. "Elena, right?" She blinked. "I didn't tell you my name." "It was on the mail in your mail," he said simply. "Elena Martinez, apartment 4C. Are you okay?" The question was the same as the one he'd asked in the rain, and Elena realized that he'd been expecting her to call. Not just hoping, expecting. Like he'd known she would need help and had just been patiently waiting for her to realize it too. Elena took a breath. "I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. They need an emergency contact, and I don't have anyone, and I know this is crazy, asking a stranger, but I don't know what else to do." Silence on the other end of the line. Elena squeezed her eyes shut, already regretting this call. Then Marcus said, "What time is the appointment?" "You'll do it?" "What time, Lena?" 2 o'clock. "But you don't have to actually come, they just need a name and number." "I'll be there at 1:30, Marcus said. "Text me the address." "Marcus, you don't have to." "See you tomorrow, Elena." He hung up before she could protest further. Marcus arrived at 1:25 p.m., 5 minutes early, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of the suit she'd seen him in before. He looked more approachable this way, less like a so and more like, well, like someone who might actually be her friend. "You came," Elena said stupidly, standing outside the clinic. "I said I would." "But you don't even know me." Marcus smiled, a gentle expression that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "So let's change that. Tell me about yourself while we wait for your appointment." They sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other pregnant women and their partners, And Elena found herself talking. Really, talking, the way she hadn't talked to anyone in months. She told him about her graphic design work, about her parents' accident, about how she'd moved to New York with big dreams and had been working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet. She didn't tell him about Nathan. Not yet. That wound was still too fresh. When the nurse called her name, Marcus stood too. "I'll wait here," he said. If you want, you can come in. "I don't mind." Marcus looked surprised, but he nodded and followed her into the examination room. Elena would never forget the moment they heard the heartbeat for the first time. It filled the room, quick and strong and impossibly real. She started crying, overwhelmed by the sound of this tiny life growing inside her, this little person she'd been so scared of but was already starting to love. When she looked over, Marcus was crying too. Not sobbing, just tears streaming silently down his face as he stared at the ultrasound monitor. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping his eyes quickly. "I don't know why It's okay," Elena said softly. "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. After the appointment, he walked her back to her apartment. At her door, Elena turned to thank him and found herself saying instead, "Why are you doing this?" "Helping me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because I know what it's like to be alone when you need someone most. And I thought, maybe I could be the person who showed up for you. If you'll let me." "Why though? What do you get out of it?" "Nothing," Marcus said simply. "That's not why you help people, Elena. You help because it's the right thing to do." Elena studied his face, searching for the catch, for the ulterior motive. But all she saw was sincerity. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay, you can help. But I'm not a charity case. I'm not some broken thing you get to fix." "I know that," Marcus said gently. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. It takes real courage to do what you're doing." And that's how it started. Not with romance. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Just with one person showing up for another, day after day, choice after choice. Marcus started small. He'd text her in the mornings, "How are you feeling? Do you need anything?" He'd drop off groceries when her morning sickness was bad. He'd sit with her during appointments, holding her hand when the needles came out because he'd noticed she was afraid of them. He never pushed for more. Never asked about the father, never suggested that his help came with strings attached. He just showed up. Every single time she needed him, and even sometimes when she didn't realize she did. 3 months into her pregnancy, Elena's apartment building failed an inspection. The landlord gave all the tenants 30 days to vacate while he dealt with the violations. Elena, who'd been barely affording the place as it was, had no idea where she'd go. Every apartment she looked at either cost too much or wouldn't accept a pregnant single woman as a tenant. She'd been sitting on the steps of her soon-to-be former building, her head in her hands, when Marcus found her. "I can't do this," she'd said, not even looking up. "I can't find a place, I can't afford to move, I'm going to end up living in my car with a newborn." "You're not going to live in your car," Marcus said firmly. "Come stay with me." Elena's head snapped up. "What?" "I have a guest house. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished. It's sitting empty. You can stay there, rent-free, until you get back on your feet." "Marcus, I can't." "Yes, you can. Elena, please. Let me help." "Why?" The question came out desperate. "Why do you keep helping me? What do you want from me?" Marcus crouched down so he was eye level with her. "I don't want anything from you. I want things for you. Safety. Security. A chance to breathe. That's all. Nobody does that. Nobody helps without wanting something in return." "I do," Marcus said simply. Elena searched his face for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But all she found was honest concern. "There has to be a reason," she whispered. People don't just do this. Marcus hesitated, and for the first time since they'd met, Elena saw something shadowed in his eyes. Something painful. Let's just say, he said quietly, that I know what it's like to fail someone who needed you. And I promised myself I'd never let that happen again. He didn't elaborate, and Elena didn't push. Instead, she nodded and accepted his help, moving into the guest house behind his sprawling property in Westchester. It was beautiful. More beautiful than anywhere she'd ever lived. The guest house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that actually worked, and a living room with windows that overlooked Marcus's garden. "This is too much," Elena had said, standing in the doorway. "It's not enough," Marcus had replied. "But it's a start." But Marcus was hiding something. A past failure that haunted him. And soon, Elena would discover the truth that explained everything. Elena's son was born on a Tuesday, during one of the worst snowstorms New York had seen in years. Marcus had been the one to drive her to the hospital, his hands steady on the wheel even as the roads became treacherous. He'd been the one to hold her hand through each contraction, to remind her to breathe, to tell her she was strong enough to do this. And when the baby finally came, 7 pounds 4 ounces with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced his arrival to the entire maternity ward, Marcus had cut the umbilical cord with tears streaming down his face. "You did it," he'd whispered to Elena as they placed the baby on her chest. "You did it." "We did it," Elena corrected, reaching for his hand. Now, 6 months later, Elena sat on the floor of her living room surrounded by toys, watching her son, they'd named him Adrian after her father, reach for a stuffed dinosaur just out of his grasp. Marcus sat beside her, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up, making dinosaur noises that made Adrian squeal with laughter. This had become their routine. Marcus would finish work and come straight to the guest house, ditching his CEO persona at the door and becoming just Marcus. The man who knew exactly how Adrian liked his bottle warmed. Who could tell the difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry. Who read parenting books like they were business reports and took notes in the margins. Elena had stopped trying to understand it. Stopped questioning why Marcus Thornfield, billionaire CEO with a company to run and surely 1,000 better things to do with his time, spent every evening playing with a baby that wasn't his. She'd stopped questioning it because, somewhere along the way, she'd fallen in love with him. It had happened gradually, so slowly she hadn't noticed until she was already in too deep. It wasn't like with Nathan, that had been a surface-level attraction, the excitement of being wanted by someone out of her league. This was different. Deeper. It was the way Marcus hummed while doing dishes, the way he always remembered to buy the specific brand of coffee she liked, the way he looked at Adrian like he was the most precious thing in the world. But Elena kept her feelings locked away, terrified of ruining the one good thing in her life. Marcus was her best friend, her support system, the person she depended on for everything. She couldn't risk losing that by admitting she wanted more. "I should probably get going," Marcus said, checking his watch. It was almost 9, and Adrian was starting to get cranky, a sure sign bedtime was approaching. "Stay," Elena said before she could stop herself. You could stay for bedtime. If you want." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or hope. "Yeah. You sure?" "I'm sure." They went through the bedtime routine together. Bath, bottle, story. Marcus held Adrian while Elena read Goodnight Moon, and when Adrian's eyes finally fluttered closed, Marcus carried him to his crib with the kind of gentleness that made Elena's heart ache. "He's perfect," Marcus whispered, looking down at the sleeping baby. "He is," Elena agreed. They stood there for a moment, side by side in the dim nursery, and Elena felt the weight of everything unspoken between them. She wanted to tell him. Wanted to say that she loved him, that he was the best man she'd ever known, that she couldn't imagine doing any of this without him. But fear kept her silent. When they returned to the living room, Elena offered Marcus a glass of wine, and he accepted. They sat on the couch together, closer than they needed to be, talking about nothing and everything. Marcus told her about a difficult business deal he was negotiating. Elena told him about a design project she'd landed for a major client. Her business was starting to take off, finally, now that she had stable housing and Marcus's support. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said, and the way he said it, with such genuine warmth, made Elena's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said softly. "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you think, Elena." "Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out." She paused, gathering courage. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He turned to face her fully, his expression open. "Anything. Why are you really doing this? Helping me, being here for Adrian, spending all your free time with us? And don't say it's because it's the right thing to do. There has to be more to it than that." Marcus was quiet for so long that Elena started to regret asking. But finally he set down his wine glass and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "You're right," he said quietly. "There is more to it." Elena's heart started to race. "What?" "I had a family once," Marcus said, his voice rough. "A wife. A daughter." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd never heard him mention anyone. Had started to assume he'd always been alone, like her. "Her name is Lily," Marcus continued. "She's 8 now. Beautiful. Smart. Has this laugh that sounds like bells." He paused, his jaw working. "I don't get to hear it anymore." "What happened?" "I was building the company. 20-hour days, constant travel, always one more deal to close. I told myself I was doing it for them, building a future, securing their comfort. But really," he laughed bitterly, "really I was just ambitious. I wanted to prove I could build an empire, and I sacrificed my family to do it." Elena reached out and took his hand. Marcus looked down at their joined hands like he couldn't quite believe she was touching him. "My wife, Catherine, tried to tell me. Tried to say that Lily needed her father, that money wasn't enough, that I was missing everything that mattered. But I didn't listen. I thought I had time. Thought I could make it up to them later, once the company was more established. Marcus, one day, I came home from a 2-week trip to find the house empty. Catherine had left, taken Lily with her. Just gone. There was a note saying she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't watch our daughter grow up, believing that fathers were people who sent expensive gifts but never showed up. She filed for divorce. Got full custody because I couldn't even argue that I deserved shared custody. My work schedule made it impossible." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now, and Elena's heart was breaking for him. "I've seen Lily 4 times in 4 years, Elena. 4 times. At events, Catherine couldn't avoid bringing her to a school play, a birthday party. Each time, she looks at me like I'm a stranger. Because I am. I'm her father by biology, but I'm not her dad. I didn't earn that title." "Oh, Marcus," Elena whispered. "When I saw you that day in the rain," Marcus continued, "you looked the way I felt. But alone. Terrified. And you were pregnant, and I thought maybe if I could be there for you and your baby, I could prove to myself that I wasn't completely broken. That I could be the kind of father I should have been. That I could learn from my mistakes and do better." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were devastated. "So yes, I'm helping you for selfish reasons. Because every time I'm there for Adrian, every time I show up, every milestone I don't miss, it feels like maybe I'm not completely irredeemable. Maybe I can be a good father, even if not to my own daughter." His voice dropped to a whisper. But I wasn't sure you'd still want me here once you knew. Once you knew I'd already failed at this once before. Elena felt tears streaming down her own face now. She moved closer to him, taking his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me, she said fiercely. You didn't fail. You made mistakes. You were human. But you learned from them, Marcus. You learned and you changed and you became someone better. That's not failure. That's growth. That's courage. Elena. You've been there for Adrian since before he was born. You've been more of a father to him than his biological father ever was. You chose us, Marcus. Every single day, you choose us. That's what makes you his father, not biology. Not some legal document. Your choice. I don't want to be a replacement, Marcus said, his voice cracking. For Adrian's real father. I don't want you to think I'm trying to. Nathan isn't his real father, Elena interrupted. Not in any way that matters. A real father shows up. A real father does the work. A real father loves his child not because he has to, but because he wants to. And that's you, Marcus. That's who you've been from the beginning. Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the dim light of the living room while the baby monitor on the side table broadcast Adrian's soft breathing. I don't want to feel like a ghost anymore, Elena whispered into Marcus's shoulder. I spent so long feeling invisible, like I didn't matter. First with Nathan, and then just trying to survive on my own. But you made me feel real again. You made me feel like I deserved to be loved. Marcus pulled back just enough to look at her face. Elena, you do deserve to be loved. You deserve everything good in this world. So do you, she said, and then, before she could lose her nerve, she kissed him. For a moment, Marcus froze, and Elena's heart sank. She'd misread the situation, ruined everything, destroyed their friendship. Then Marcus was kissing her back, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. The kiss was slow and sweet and full of all the things they'd been too afraid to say. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said simply. I've loved you for months. But I didn't want to push, didn't want you to feel like my help came with strings attached. I love you too, Elena interrupted. And this isn't about your help or what you've done for us. This is about who you are. The man you've proven yourself to be. They kissed again, and it felt like coming home. Like finding the missing piece Elena hadn't even known she was looking for. Later that night, after Marcus had reluctantly gone back to his main house, Elena lay in bed thinking about everything he'd told her. About Lily, the daughter he'd lost through his own mistakes. About how helping her and Adrian had been his way of seeking redemption. She understood now why he'd been so committed, so present. He knew exactly what to do, what to say, how to help. He'd been given a second chance to be the father he should have been, and he'd grabbed it with both hands. And Elena had been given a second chance, too, to be loved by someone who understood what it meant to show up. Who knew that love wasn't just a feeling but a choice, made every single day. They were both broken in their own ways. But maybe, Elena thought as she drifted off to sleep, broken pieces could fit together and make something beautiful. But their hard-won piece was about to be shattered. Because Nathan Castellan was about to make a decision that would threaten everything they'd built. The package arrived on a Monday morning in early October, delivered by a courier who required Elena's signature. She'd been making breakfast, scrambled eggs for Adrian, who was now almost 3 and had opinions about everything, when the doorbell rang. Marcus had already left for work, though he'd texted her 3 times since. A good morning message, a photo of his coffee with the caption "Thinking of you," and a reminder that he'd be home early to help with Adrian's dinosaur birthday party preparations. They'd been together for 2 years now, living in a kind of domestic bliss that Elena had never thought possible. Marcus had proposed 6 months ago, nothing flashy, just the two of them and Adrian at the beach house he'd bought in the Hamptons, watching the sunset while Adrian built sandcastles. The wedding was planned for next spring, a small ceremony with close friends and family. Catherine, Marcus's ex-wife, had even softened toward him. After years of limited contact, she'd allowed him to start seeing Lily more regularly, every other weekend, and Wednesday dinners. It wasn't full custody, but it was healing. Marcus and Lily were building a relationship, slowly but surely. The little girl had even started calling him Dad again instead of Marcus, and Elena had seen Marcus cry the first time it happened. Everything was, for the first time in Elena's life, actually good. Stable. So when she signed for the thick manila envelope and saw the return address, Castellan Media Corporation, legal department, her blood ran cold. Mama? Adrian tugged at her pajama pants. Eggs are burning. Elena rushed back to the kitchen, turning off the stove, but her hands were shaking as she stared at the envelope on the counter. She knew what this was. Knew it in her bones, in the way your body knows danger before your mind catches up. She waited until Adrian was settled in front of his favorite cartoon before opening the envelope. The legal documents spilled out onto the kitchen table, and Elena felt the room tilt as she read the words. Petition for paternity establishment and custody modification. Nathan James Castellan, petitioner versus Elena Marie Martinez, respondent. Nathan was suing for paternity rights. For joint custody. For the right to be Adrian's father after 3 years of silence, of denial, of acting like her son didn't exist. Elena's vision blurred. She read through the documents with growing horror and rage. Nathan's lawyers had crafted a narrative that painted him as a young man who'd made mistakes but had since matured and established himself professionally. The petition claimed he'd only recently learned of the child's existence, a blatant lie, and that he was now ready and willing to fulfill his parental obligations. There was no mention of his denial in the hotel lobby. No mention of blocking her number. No mention of the 17 unanswered calls or the way he'd looked at her like she was nothing. Just a carefully constructed story of a reformed man seeking to be part of his son's life. Elena grabbed her phone and called Marcus. He answered immediately. Hey, beautiful. Everything okay? Marcus. Her voice cracked. He's suing me. Nathan is suing me for custody. There was a beat of silence, and then Marcus's voice went deadly calm. I'm coming home. Don't do anything, don't call anyone, don't respond. I'm on my way. He made it from his office in Manhattan to Westchester in record time. When he burst through the door, Elena was sitting at the kitchen table, the legal documents spread out before her, tears streaming silently down her face. Marcus read through everything, his jaw getting tighter with each page. When he finished, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. David? It's Marcus. I need you at my house in an hour. Yes, I know you're in court. Cancel it. This is more important. Thank you. He hung up and crouched in front of Elena, taking her hands in his. Listen to me, he said, his voice intense but steady. This is not going to happen. Nathan doesn't get to do this. We have the best lawyers money can buy, and we are going to fight this with everything we have. He's Adrian's biological father, Elena whispered. What if the court? Biology doesn't make you a father, Marcus interrupted. Being there does. Showing up does. And I've been showing up for 3 years while Nathan pretended Adrian didn't exist. No court in the world is going to reward that. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. Elena, I know people. I have resources. And I will use every single connection, every dollar, every ounce of influence I have to protect our family. Nathan started this fight, but I'm going to finish it. David Kaplan arrived exactly 1 hour later. He was one of the top family law attorneys in New York, with a reputation for winning impossible cases. Marcus had him on retainer, a fact Elena hadn't known until now. David read through Nathan's petition with the careful attention of a surgeon examining a patient. When he finished, he looked up with a grim expression. "This is a strong petition," he said bluntly. "Nathan's lawyers are good. They've framed this as a father's rights case, and judges tend to be sympathetic to biological parents who claim they want to be involved." Elena felt her heart sink. "However," David continued, "they've made several mistakes. First, they claim Nathan only recently learned of the child's existence. We can disprove that. Second, they're painting him as a reformed character without acknowledging the abandonment. We can use that. Third, they're ignoring the existing father figure in the child's life." He looked at Marcus. "You've been acting as Adrian's father for how long?" "Since before he was born. I was at the hospital when Elena gave birth. I'm on his emergency contact forms, his school pickup list. I've been to every doctor's appointment, every milestone. But we'll need documentation of all of that. Medical records, school records, photos, videos, anything that proves you've been the consistent parental figure." David made notes on his tablet. "What about witnesses? People who can testify to Nathan's abandonment and your involvement?" "Her obedience," Marcus said immediately. "She's been Elena's doctor since the beginning and has seen me at every appointment. Adrian's pediatrician. The staff at his preschool. My executive assistant can testify that I've rearranged my entire schedule around Adrian for years." David nodded, still taking notes. The fact that Nathan denied the child in a public setting is crucial. The hotel lobby confrontation, were there witnesses? "At least a dozen people," Elena said, finding her voice. "His colleagues, hotel staff. It was very public." "Excellent. We'll depose all of them." David looked up. "Here's what's going to happen. Nathan's lawyers are going to try to paint this as a father who made mistakes but has changed. We're going to paint it as opportunistic manipulation, a man who only showed interest once Elena had built a stable life with someone else. We're going to prove that the child has a father already, and that father is Marcus, regardless of biology." "Can we win?" Elena asked. David met her eyes. If Nathan had filed this 2 years ago, before Marcus was so deeply involved, it would be harder. But now, with 3 years of documented abandonment and 3 years of Marcus acting as Adrian's father, we can win. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but we can win. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal preparation. Marcus hired a private investigator to dig into Nathan's background. What they found was damning. Nathan had a history of running from responsibility, not just with Elena but in other areas of his life. Unpaid debts that his father had covered up. A DUI that had been quietly settled. A pattern of behavior that painted a picture of a man who avoided consequences. But Nathan's lawyers were working too. They leaked stories to the press about a billionaire trying to buy his way into another man's family, and a biological father fighting for his rights against corporate power. The media ate it up. Suddenly, Marcus and Elena were the villains, and Nathan was the sympathetic underdog. "How is this happening?" Elena asked Marcus one night as they lay in bed, unable to sleep. "How is he making himself the victim?" "Because he has good lawyers and a good PR team," Marcus said grimly. "But the truth always comes out, Elena. In court, under oath, he won't be able to maintain the lie." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Marcus's lawyers filed counterpetitions and motions, building their case brick by brick. They collected affidavits from Elena's OBGYN, Adrian's pediatrician, the preschool director, and dozens of others who could testify to Marcus's involvement in Nathan's absence. They also filed a motion to have the hearing held at the Grandview Hotel's conference center, neutral ground, but also strategic. It was the site of Nathan's public denial, and Marcus wanted that memory hanging over the proceedings. The judge approved the location. As the hearing date approached, Elena found herself swinging between rage and terror. Rage at Nathan for doing this, for disrupting their lives, for acting like he had any right to Adrian after years of absence. Terror that, despite everything, the court might side with biology over love. "What if we lose?" she asked Marcus the night before the hearing. "What if the judge decides Nathan deserves joint custody? What if Adrian has to spend weekends with a stranger? What if—" "Stop," Marcus said gently, pulling her close. "We're not going to lose." "But Elena, even if the worst happens, even if Nathan gets some form of visitation, it doesn't change who Adrian's real father is. It doesn't change our family. Biology can't compete with 3 years of love and presence. Adrian knows who his father is." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Adrian appeared in their bedroom doorway, dragging his favorite stuffed T-Rex. "Bad dream," he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Marcus immediately got up and scooped him into his arms. "Come here, buddy. Want to sleep with us tonight?" Adrian nodded against Marcus's shoulder, and they settled him between them in the bed. Within minutes, the little boy was asleep again, one hand clutching Marcus's shirt, the other holding Elena's finger. Elena looked at Marcus over their son's head. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For choosing us." "You don't have to thank me for loving you," Marcus whispered back. "It's the easiest thing I've ever done." The next morning, they would face Nathan in that conference room. They would fight for their family, for their right to stay together, for Adrian's right to have the father who'd chosen him rather than the one who'd denied him. But tonight they were just a family. Together. And nothing Nathan could do would ever change that. Or would it? The Grandview Hotel looked exactly as Elena remembered it, all marble and glass and understated wealth. But this time, she wasn't standing in the lobby alone with a crying toddler. This time, she walked in flanked by Marcus on one side and David Kaplan on the other, her head held high, wearing the confidence that came from knowing she wasn't alone anymore. Nathan was already there when they arrived at the conference room. He'd brought his own team, his lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen who had a reputation for winning custody cases, and a man in an expensive suit who Elena assumed was a paralegal or assistant. Nathan himself looked different than he had 3 years ago. More polished, more confident, but there was something brittle about him too, like a thin shell of competence over deep-seated insecurity. He looked up when they entered, and for a moment, their eyes met. Elena saw something flicker in his expression, guilt, maybe, or regret, but it vanished quickly, replaced by the careful neutrality his lawyers had no doubt coached him to maintain. The mediator, appointed by the court for this preliminary hearing, was a woman in her 50s named Judge Sarah Morrison. She had gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Let's begin," she said once everyone was seated. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether Mr. Castellan's petition for paternity establishment and custody modification has merit. This is not a custody trial. We're here to establish basic facts and determine next steps. Understood?" Everyone nodded. "Good. Miss Chen, you may present your client's position." Patricia Chen stood, every inch the polished professional. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Nathan Castellan, is here today to establish his parental rights to his biological son, Adrian Martinez. Mr. Castellan acknowledges that he made mistakes 3 years ago when he learned of Ms. Martinez's pregnancy. He was young, unprepared, and frankly, he panicked." Elena's hands clenched into fists under the table. Marcus placed his hand over hers, squeezing gently. "However," Chin continued. Mr. Castellan has spent the intervening years maturing and establishing himself professionally. He is now Vice President of Development at Castellan Media, with a stable income and a desire to be part of his son's life. He is not seeking full custody, merely the opportunity to know his child and to fulfill his parental responsibilities. She sat down, and Judge Morrison turned to David Kaplan. Mr. Kaplan? David stood, and there was something different about him now. A sharpness, a focus that made it clear why Marcus had hired him. Your Honor, my client opposes Mr. Castellan's petition on several grounds. First, the claim that Mr. Castellan only recently decided to be involved is demonstrably false. He has known about Adrian since before his birth and chose, deliberately and repeatedly, to deny his existence. Second, Adrian already has a father, Marcus Thornfield, who has been the sole consistent parental figure in this child's life since conception. Third, and most importantly, Mr. Castellan's sudden interest in fatherhood is suspiciously timed and appears to be motivated by factors other than genuine concern for the child's welfare. Those are serious allegations, Mr. Kaplan, Judge Morrison said. Can you support them? Yes, Your Honor. We have documentation, witness testimony, and Mr. Castellan's own actions to support every claim. Then let's hear it. Ms. Martinez, would you tell me, in your own words, what happened 3 years ago? Elena took a deep breath and told her story. She spoke about meeting Nathan, about their relationship, about the pregnancy test, and his immediate rejection. She told the judge about the 17 unanswered calls, the blocked number, and the note that said, "I'm not ready for this." And did Mr. Castellan ever, at any point during your pregnancy or after Adrian's birth, attempt to contact you or inquire about the child? Judge Morrison asked. No, Your Honor. Not until 3 weeks ago, when these papers arrived. That's not entirely accurate, Patricia Chin interjected. My client did see Ms. Martinez 3 weeks ago, here at this hotel, and attempted to have a conversation about the child. That's a lie, Elena said, her voice rising. He denied knowing me. He told everyone in that lobby he'd never seen me before in his life. That's your interpretation. It's the truth. Elena turned to Nathan. You looked me in the eye and said you didn't know me. You called security to have me escorted out. You denied your own son in front of a dozen witnesses. Nathan's face flushed red. I was surprised. I didn't handle it well. But I never said. Yes, you did, Marcus interrupted, his voice cold and cutting. I was there. I heard every word. And before you try to spin this, know that I've already given affidavits from 5 people who were in that lobby and heard exactly what you said. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Mr. Thornfield, I understand you're personally involved, but please let the attorneys handle this. With respect, Your Honor, Marcus said, not backing down, I am personally involved. I've been Adrian's father for 3 years. I was there when he was born. I've been to every doctor's appointment, every preschool event, every milestone. I've changed thousands of diapers, walked miles of floors at 3 a.m., and taught him to ride his first tricycle. So yes, I'm personally involved, because that's my son Nathan who is trying to claim. Biologically, Chin started. Biology means nothing, Marcus said, his voice rising now. You think fatherhood is about DNA? About a moment of conception? Fatherhood is about showing up. It's about being there when your child is sick, when they're scared, when they need you. It's about sacrifice and consistency and love. And Nathan has shown none of that. Mr. Thornfield, Judge Morrison said firmly, I understand your passion, but you need to. No. Marcus stood up, and there was something almost dangerous in his posture now. I need you to understand something, Your Honor. Nathan didn't just abandon Elena. He didn't just walk away from his responsibility. He actively denied his child's existence. He looked at a 2-year-old boy and called him a stranger. What kind of father does that? A young, scared one who made a mistake, Chin argued. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, Elena said, finding her voice again. A mistake is being late to a doctor's appointment. Denying your child's existence for 3 years isn't a mistake, it's a choice. Judge Morrison looked at Nathan. Mr. Castellan, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why are you seeking custody now? Nathan cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direct attention. I've grown up a lot in the past 3 years. I've established my career, gotten my life together. And I realized that I made a terrible mistake. I want to be part of my son's life. I want to be a father. Why now? The judge pressed. Why not a year ago? 2 years ago? Why wait until Ms. Martinez had built a stable life with Mr. Thornfield? Nathan hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena saw the truth. He'd waited because he hadn't cared until it became convenient. Until he'd gotten pressure from his own father, perhaps, or realized that having a child might actually benefit his image rather than damage it. I wasn't ready before, Nathan said finally. I am now. But Adrian already has a father, Judge Morrison said. A man who has been there since birth. What makes you think disrupting that relationship is in the child's best interest? Because I'm his biological father. That has to count for something. It counts for very little, Mr. Castellan, when weighed against 3 years of abandonment. Judge Morrison looked down at her notes. I've reviewed the affidavits Mr. Kaplan submitted. Testimony from medical professionals, educators, and family friends, all painting a picture of Mr. Thornfield as the primary parental figure. I've also reviewed the evidence of your denial in this very hotel. Unless you can provide compelling evidence that you attempted to be involved and were somehow prevented from doing so, I'm inclined to dismiss this petition. Your Honor, Chin said quickly, my client has rights. Your client has a biological connection, Judge Morrison corrected. Rights are earned through responsibility and presence. Mr. Castellan demonstrated neither. Nathan's face went pale. Chen whispered something to him urgently. Then Nathan did something unexpected. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Can I speak? He asked, his voice cracking slightly. Judge Morrison nodded. Go ahead. Nathan looked at Elena, then at Marcus, then at the judge. I was scared, he said simply. 3 years ago I was terrified. Elena was pregnant. And all I could think was that I wasn't ready. I had plans for my life, and a baby didn't fit into them. So I ran. I blocked her number. I pretended it wasn't happening. I told myself that if I just ignored it, it would go away. The room was silent. And then I saw them, Nathan continued. 3 weeks ago in the lobby downstairs. I saw Elena with the boy. And he looked so much like me that I couldn't deny it anymore. Couldn't pretend it wasn't real. And instead of doing the right thing, instead of admitting my mistake and asking for forgiveness, I denied them again. I looked at my own son and said I didn't know him. Tears were streaming down Nathan's face now. Patricia told me we could win this case. That I had rights, that I could get joint custody, that the court would see I'm stable now, and give me a chance. And maybe she's right. Maybe I do have some legal claim. But you know what? He looked at Marcus. Marcus is right. I haven't earned the title of father. I haven't put in the work. I haven't shown up. He turned to Elena. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. For leaving you alone, for denying you, for making you think you weren't worth fighting for. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Elena felt tears on her own face now, not sure what she was feeling. Rage, sadness, relief, all mixed. I don't deserve to be Adrian's father, Nathan said quietly. Not after what I've done. Not when he already has a father who's been there from day one. So I'm dropping the petition. I'm going to sign the termination of parental rights. And I'm going to do the one decent thing I can do, which is walk away and let you all be the family you already are. The room erupted in whispers. Patricia Chen was furiously whispering to Nathan, clearly trying to stop him from saying more. But Nathan shook his head and turned to leave. Mr. Castellan, Judge Morrison called after him. If you're serious about this, we need to do it properly. Through legal channels. Nathan paused at the door. I'm serious. Tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. But was Nathan's surrender genuine? Or was this one final manipulation? 3 days after the conference room confrontation, Elena's phone rang. The caller ID showed Nathan's number, a number she'd deleted years ago but still recognized. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Elena? It's Nathan. Can we meet? Just to talk. Please. No lawyers, no witnesses. Just us. Elena's first instinct was to say no. To hang up and never look back. But something in his voice, something raw and genuine, made her pause. Why? Because I need to apologize. Really apologize. And I can't do that in a courtroom or through lawyers. Please. Just coffee. 20 minutes of your time. Elena looked at Marcus, who was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, Adrian playing with blocks at their feet. Marcus raised his eyebrows questioningly. Let me call you back, she said to Nathan and hung up. He wants to meet, she told Marcus. Just to talk. Do you want to? Elena thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to maintain the walls she'd built around herself. But another part, the part that had spent 3 years working through anger and hurt, wanted closure. Real closure, not just legal documents. I think I do, she said finally. But I want you nearby. Not at the meeting, but close enough that I can call if I need you. Marcus nodded. Always. They met at a coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood, far from anywhere either of them usually frequented. Nathan was already there when Elena arrived, sitting at a corner table, staring into a cup of coffee that looked untouched. He stood when he saw her, then seemed unsure whether to offer a handshake or just sit. Elena decided for him by sitting down without preamble. You wanted to talk, she said. Talk. Nathan sat, running his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she remembered from years ago. I'm dropping the custody suit. Officially. My lawyer is filing the paperwork tomorrow. I know. You said that at the hearing. Yeah, but I wanted you to know I meant it. This isn't some legal strategy. I'm really withdrawing the petition and signing the termination of parental rights. Why? Elena asked bluntly. Why now? After you went through all the trouble of filing, of hiring lawyers, of disrupting our lives. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. Because I saw him. Your son. He stopped himself. Adrian. I saw him with Marcus in that lobby. The way he looked at Marcus. The love. And I realized, I don't know that little boy. I don't know his favorite color or what makes him laugh or how he likes his bedtime stories read. He likes them with all the voices, Elena said quietly. Different voices for each character. And his favorite color is orange, like A.T. Rex. And he laughs when you tickle the spot right under his ribs. Nathan smiled sadly. See? You know that. Marcus knows that. I don't know anything. And whose fault is that? Yours, Elena said, not unkindly. Mine, Nathan agreed. I was scared, Elena. 3 years ago, I was terrified. I wasn't ready. I had all these plans for my life, and a baby didn't fit into them. My father had just given me my first real position at the company. I was trying to prove myself, and the idea of being a father felt like it would derail everything. So you ran. So I ran. Like a coward. Nathan finally looked up at her, and Elena saw genuine pain in his eyes. And I've spent 3 years trying to convince myself it was the right choice. That you were better off without me. That the kid would be fine. That I'd made the smart decision. Was it? Elena asked. The smart decision? No. The word was barely a whisper. It was the worst mistake of my life. But you know what's worse? Trying to fix it now would be selfish. I'd be disrupting Adrian's life, his routine, his sense of security. All for what? To make myself feel better? To tell myself I'm not the bad guy? He finally met her eyes. Marcus is his father. In every way that matters. And you're incredible, Elena. You built this beautiful life, this family without me. And I think the best thing I can do now is let you keep it. Elena felt her own tears coming. This wasn't the Nathan she remembered, the charming, self-centered man who'd walked away without looking back. This was someone different. Someone who'd learned, painfully, what his choices had cost. Why did you file the petition at all? She asked. If you can see all this now, why did you try to get custody? Nathan laughed bitterly. My father. He found out about Adrian somehow. I think one of his colleagues saw us at the hotel and mentioned it. He was furious that I had a son I wasn't acknowledging. Said it made the family look bad. That I needed to either claim the kid or make sure there was no legal connection that could come back to haunt us. So you chose to claim him. I thought I could do it halfway. Be a father on my terms, on convenient weekends, without having to do the hard parts. I thought I could swoop in, be the fun dad who bought expensive presents, and that would be enough. He shook his head. But watching you and Marcus at that hearing all those people testify about how present he's been, how much he loves Adrian, I realized there's no halfway. Either you're a father or you're not. And I haven't been. I haven't earned that title. No, Elena said softly. You haven't. I know you have every reason to hate me, Nathan continued. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything really. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving you alone when you needed me most. For denying Adrian. For disrupting your life with this lawsuit. I'm sorry. Elena sat with that apology for a long moment. She'd imagined this conversation 1,000 times over the years, imagined screaming at Nathan, making him feel every ounce of pain he'd caused her. But now that she was here, actually facing him, she found she didn't have the energy for rage anymore. She'd already moved past him. Already built a life full of love and stability, and a genuine partnership. Nathan was a ghost from her past, and ghosts only had power if you let them. I don't hate you, she said finally. I did for a while. But I don't anymore. I feel sad for you. Because you have no idea what you gave up. You have no idea what it's like to watch Adrian learn something new, to hear him laugh, to have him run into your arms after preschool. You gave up all of that because you were scared. I know. And now you can't get it back. Even if you wanted to, even if you tried to be involved now, you'd always be the man who walked away. Adrian will never know you the way he knows Marcus. And that's your loss, Nathan. Not ours. Nathan nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. That's why I'm signing the papers. I'm going to terminate my parental rights completely. And I'm going to ask the judge to allow Marcus to adopt Adrian, if that's what you both want. Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. You do that? It's the least I can do. Adrian deserves to have his real father's name on his birth certificate. And that's Marcus, not me. They sat in silence for a moment, and Elena realized this was closure. Real closure. Not the dramatic confrontation she'd once imagined, but something quieter and more real. Thank you, she said finally, for doing the right thing. Finally. It's 3 years too late, Nathan said. Yes. But it's still the right thing. Nathan stood, pulling a manila folder from his bag. These are the termination papers. Already signed. Give them to your lawyer. And Elena? Tell Adrian when he's older, if he ever asks about me, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I wasn't strong enough to be what he needed, but that he was lucky enough to have someone who was. He left before Elena could respond, leaving her sitting alone with the folder, her coffee going cold, her mind spinning. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. How did it go? He asked immediately. He's really signing away his rights. And he wants you to adopt Adrian. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, are you serious? Completely serious. He just gave me the signed papers. Elena, Marcus's voice broke. Are you sure? This is what you want. I've never been more sure of anything. You're Adrian's father, Marcus. You always have been. This just makes it official. I'm coming to get you, Marcus said. Stay there. I'm coming. When Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, Elena was still sitting at the table, the folder in front of her. He slid into the seat Nathan had vacated and pulled her into his arms. We're really doing this? He asked. I'm really going to be Adrian's father? Legally? You already are his father, Elena said. But yes, legally too. Marcus pulled back to look at her face. Thank you. For trusting me with him. For letting me love both of you. You don't have to thank me for that, Elena said, echoing his words from months ago. It's the easiest thing I've ever done. And so the ghosts of the past were finally laid to rest. But what would their future hold? The courtroom was small and informal, nothing like the cold conference rooms where they'd faced Nathan. Judge Morrison, the same judge from the preliminary hearing, sat at the bench with a warm smile as Marcus, Elena, and Adrian entered. Adrian, now 3.5, was wearing his favorite dinosaur shirt and holding Marcus's hand tightly. He didn't understand everything that was happening, but they'd explained it to him in the simplest terms. Marcus was becoming his daddy, officially and forever. Are you ready? Judge Morrison asked, looking at Marcus. Marcus swallowed hard, clearly emotional. I've been ready for this since before he was born. The hearing was surprisingly brief. David Kaplan presented the termination of parental rights that Nathan had signed, along with statements from Nathan acknowledging Marcus's role as Adrian's father. He submitted letters of recommendation from Adrian's pediatrician, his preschool teachers, and dozens of friends and family members testifying to Marcus's commitment as a parent. Mr. Thornfield, Judge Morrison said when all the paperwork was reviewed, I've presided over a lot of adoption cases in my career. But I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut I've ever seen. The evidence of your dedication to this child is overwhelming. It's rare to see someone choose fatherhood so completely, without any biological connection or legal obligation. She smiled. But that's what makes it so powerful. You chose Adrian. Every single day you chose to be his father. And that's what fatherhood really is. A choice to show up, to love, to be present. Marcus was crying now, not even trying to hide it. Elena reached over and squeezed his hand. Adrian, Judge Morrison called gently. Can you come up here for a minute? Adrian looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. The little boy walked up to the judge's bench, his dinosaur shoes lighting up with each step. Hi there, Judge Morrison said kindly. Do you know what we're doing here today? Adrian nodded seriously. Making Dada my real Dada. That's exactly right. Do you want that? But Dada's the best. He does all the voices when he reads stories, and he knows all the dinosaurs' names, and he makes the best mac and cheese in the whole world. The courtroom laughed, the tension breaking with Adrian's innocent honesty. Well, that does sound like a pretty great dad, Judge Morrison said, her eyes twinkling. Adrian, I want you to know something important. Your daddy, Marcus? He already was your real dad. He's been your real dad since you were born. What we're doing today is just making the paperwork match what's already true in your heart. Does that make sense? Adrian considered this seriously. So nothing changes? Nothing changes except your last name, if you want. You could be Adrian Thornfield instead of Adrian Martinez. Would you like that? Adrian looked back at Marcus and Elena. Can I be both? Adrian Martinez Thornfield. Marcus let out a choked laugh. Yes, buddy. You can absolutely be both. Then yeah, I want that. Judge Morrison smiled. Then that's what we'll do. Adrian Martinez Thornfield it is. She picked up her gavel. It is the order of this court that Marcus James Thornfield is granted full adoption rights and parental status for the minor child Adrian Martinez Thornfield. The adoption is final and binding. Congratulations to your family. The gavel came down, and Marcus was out of his seat, scooping Adrian into his arms, holding him like he never wanted to let go. We did it, buddy, he whispered. You're officially mine now. Forever and ever. Was I not yours before? Adrian asked, confused. You were always mine, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. Always. But now everyone knows it. Elena joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and they stood there in the courtroom, a complete family at last. Later that day, they had a small celebration at home. Catherine came, bringing Lily, who was now 12 and had warmed considerably to Elena over the past year. The two girls, Adrian and Lily, were developing a genuine sibling bond, despite their age difference. You're officially my brother now, Lily told Adrian, who was showing her his new toy dinosaur for the 100th time. Was I not your brother before? Adrian asked, echoing his earlier question. Lily laughed. You were, but now it's extra official. Marcus watched them play together, his arm around Elena's waist. I never thought I'd get a second chance at this, he said quietly. Being a father. Doing it right. You didn't get a second chance, Elena corrected. You earned it. There's a difference. I love you, Marcus said, kissing her temple. Thank you for trusting me with your son. With our son. Thank you for showing me what a real partner looks like. What real love looks like. That night, after all the guests had gone home and Adrian was asleep, Marcus and Elena sat in the nursery, watching their son sleep peacefully. We should get married, Marcus said suddenly. Elena laughed softly. We're already engaged. The wedding is in 2 months. No, I mean now. This week. I don't want to wait. I want Adrian to be there as Adrian Thornfield. I want us to all have the same name. You want to move up the wedding? I want to start our life as a complete, legal family as soon as possible. We've waited long enough, don't you think? Elena looked at him, this man who'd shown up in the rain 3.5 years ago, who'd offered his umbrella and his business card and his entire life without asking for anything in return. Who'd loved her when she felt unlovable, who'd chosen her son when no one else would. Okay, she said. Let's get married this week. Really? Really? Call the venue, tell them we're moving it up. It'll be small and rushed and probably chaotic, but it'll be perfect, Marcus finished. Because we'll be together. And so, 5 days later, they stood in the same garden where Marcus had proposed, surrounded by their closest friends and family, and made promises they'd already been keeping for years. The garden behind Marcus's estate had been transformed in just 5 days, a miracle of efficient planning and unlimited resources. White chairs lined a grass aisle scattered with rose petals. String lights were woven through the trees, ready to glow as the sun set. A small altar stood at the front, decorated with flowers Elena had picked out, nothing too fancy, just simple white roses and greenery. Elena stood in the guest house she'd moved into 3.5 years ago, the home where she'd rebuilt her life, where she'd learned to trust again, where she'd fallen in love with a man who showed her that love was a choice you made every single day. Mia was helping her with the dress. A simple white gown, nothing like the elaborate wedding she'd once imagined as a young girl. This was better. You ready? Mia asked, adjusting Elena's veil. Elena looked at herself in the mirror. She looked different than she had 3.5 years ago. Stronger. Happier. Complete. I'm ready, she said. The ceremony was small, just 50 people, mostly close friends and family. Catherine was there, sitting next to her new partner, and she smiled genuinely at Elena as she walked down the aisle. Lily stood beside Marcus as one of his attendants, tears already streaming down her 12-year-old face. But the most important person was Adrian, dressed in a tiny suit, walking beside Elena and clutching a small pillow with their rings attached. Is Dada gonna cry? Adrian whispered loudly as they walked. Probably, Elena whispered back. She was right. Marcus was crying before they even reached the altar, not bothering to hide his tears as he watched his family walk toward him. The ceremony was brief and beautiful. They exchanged traditional vows, but added their own promises too. I promise to show up, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Every single day, for every single moment, for the rest of my life. I promise to choose you, to choose us, to choose our family above everything else. I promise to trust you, Elena said. To let you love me even when it's scary. To build a life with you that's based on presence, not perfection. To show Adrian what real love looks like by loving you. When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," and Marcus pulled Elena close, Adrian cheered loudly, making everyone laugh. At the reception, Marcus gave a speech that had everyone in tears. 3.5 years ago, he said, holding Elena's hand, I saw a woman standing in the rain, crying, and something in me knew I had to help. I told myself I was just being kind. But the truth is, she saved me just as much as I saved her. He looked at Elena. You gave me a second chance to be the father I should have been. You showed me that it's never too late to choose love, to choose family, to show up. And Adrian, he looked at their son, who was sitting at the head table eating cake with his hands. Adrian taught me that fatherhood isn't about biology or genetics or legal documents. It's about love. Pure, simple, unconditional love. Marcus's voice broke. I'm the luckiest man in the world. Not because I'm successful or wealthy or any of that, but because I get to wake up every morning to you and Adrian. Because I get to be your husband and his father. Because I got a second chance to do things right, and you trusted me enough to take it. He raised his glass. To family. Not the one you're born into, but the one you choose. Everyone raised their glasses, and as Elena looked around the garden, at Catherine and Lily, at Mia and her friends, at all the people who'd supported them through everything, she felt a completeness she'd never thought possible. Later, as they danced under the string lights, Marcus pulled her close. No regrets? He asked softly. Not a single one, Elena said. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other at exactly the right time, Elena said. Any earlier and we wouldn't have been ready. Any later and we might have missed our chance. You believe in fate? I believe in choice, Elena corrected. And I believe you chose me every single day, which is better than fate. As the night wore on and Adrian fell asleep on Marcus's shoulder, they slow danced together, a family complete at last. No more hauntings. No more claims. No more walking away. Only footprints are stored forever in their hearts. Because when Nathan had denied their child, Elena had walked back toward Marcus, hand outstretched. And a billionaire had stepped forward and said, without hesitation, without conditions, they're mine now. And he always would be. Forever. But their story wasn't quite over yet. Because 3 years later, an unexpected email would arrive that would test everything they'd built. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, the same day of the week that seemed to mark all the important moments in Elena's life. She was in her home office, working on designs for a major client. Her freelance business had exploded over the past few years, and she now ran a small but successful design firm with 3 employees. Adrian was in first grade, thriving academically and socially. Marcus had recently been featured in Forbes for Thornfield Industries' innovative approach to sustainable technology. They were happy, settled, secure. The email was from Nathan Castellan. Elena's hand hovered over her mouse, remembering the last time she'd heard from him, at that coffee shop 3.5 years ago, when he'd signed away his parental rights and apologized for everything. She almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity got the better of her. Dear Elena, I hope this message finds you well. I saw a photo of you and your family in a business magazine article about Marcus's latest venture. Adrian, he looks so happy. You both do. I wanted you to know that I've been in therapy for the past 2 years. Working through a lot of things. Figuring out who I want to be rather than who I thought I should be. I'm dating someone now. Her name is Rachel, and she's a teacher. When things got serious, I told her everything. About you, about Adrian, about the worst thing I've ever done. She asked me if I'd ever tried to make it right. I told her I had, in my own cowardly way, by signing those papers and walking away. But she said that wasn't making it right. It was just making it easier. For me. So I want you to know, I'm sorry. Not because I want anything from you. Not because I'm trying to ease my conscience. But because you deserved better than what I gave you. Adrian deserved better. And I'm genuinely, truly sorry that I wasn't strong enough to be what you both needed. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking to see Adrian or be part of his life. That ship has sailed and I made my choice. I'm just apologizing because it's the right thing to do and because you deserve to hear it. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I hope Adrian knows how loved he is. Not by me, I gave up that right, but by Marcus, who was man enough to do what I couldn't. Take care. Nathan. Elena read the email twice, then sat back in her chair, processing. She felt nothing. Or rather, she felt a distant kind of sadness for Nathan, for the man he could have been but chose not to be. But there was no anger left. No bitterness. Just acceptance of what was and gratitude for what she had. She heard the front door open, followed by Adrian's excited voice. Mom. Dad. I got an A on my dinosaur project. Marcus's deeper voice responded, equally excited. That's my boy. Show us. Elena saved the email to a folder marked Past, closed her laptop, and went to join her family. Marcus was in the kitchen, still in his suit from work, helping Adrian pull his project out of his backpack. When he saw Elena, his face lit up the way it always did, like she was the best thing he'd seen all day, even after 7 years together. Hey, beautiful. How was your day? It was good, Elena said, kissing him briefly. Nathan sent an email. Marcus's expression shifted, concern flickering across his face. Everything okay? Everything's fine. Just apologizing. For real this time, I think. Do you want to talk about it? Elena looked at Adrian, who was excitedly explaining his dinosaur project to them both, his enthusiasm infectious. She looked at Marcus, steady and solid beside her. She looked at the life they'd built together, messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect. No, she said softly. I don't think I do. That's not our story anymore. Marcus understood. He always understood. He pulled her close, and they stood there in the kitchen, watching their son be brilliantly, wonderfully 6 years old. You know what Rachel told me? Elena said suddenly. What? Nathan's girlfriend. In the email, he mentioned she said something to him. That signing the papers wasn't making things right, it was just making them easier. I think she's wrong. I think signing those papers was the only way he could make things right. By stepping aside and letting us be the family we already were. Marcus kissed the top of her head. You're more forgiving than I am. I'm not forgiving him, Elena clarified. I'm just at peace with everything that happened. Because if even one thing had been different, we might not be here. Right here, right now, with Adrian and this life and each other. You think everything happens for a reason? No. I think we make our own reasons. You made the choice to stop in the rain. To give me your card. To show up. And I chose to call you. To trust you. To love you. And all those choices led us here. Mom? Dad, are you listening? Adrian complained. You're being all mushy again. They laughed, turning their attention back to him, to his project, to the beautiful, mundane reality of their life together. Later that night, after Adrian was asleep and they were getting ready for bed, Marcus asked, Are you going to reply to the email? Elena thought about it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just say thank you for the apology, and that I hope he's happy. But I don't need to do it right now. You don't need to do it at all if you don't want to. I know. She smiled at him. That's the best part. I get to choose. As they lay in bed, Marcus pulled her close. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That day in the rain. When I first saw you, I almost didn't stop. I was late for a meeting, and I told myself it wasn't my problem, that you were a stranger and I should just keep walking. But you didn't. But I didn't. Something made me stop. Made me cross the street. Made me give you my card. And I'm so grateful I did, because you changed my entire life. You changed mine too, Elena whispered. We changed each other's, Marcus corrected. That's what love does. It transforms both people. Makes them better than they were alone. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, in the home they'd built together, with their son sleeping peacefully down the hall. And in the morning, Elena would wake up and maybe respond to Nathan's email with a simple, thank you. I wish you well. Or maybe she wouldn't respond at all. Because some chapters close. Some stories end. And some families are built not from where they started, but from every single choice they make to stay. If you believe love should be earned through presence, not purchased with promises, if you think family is built through choices, not just chance, then you understand the heart of this story. True love shows up. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you can say to someone isn't, I love you. It's, I choose you. Again and again and again. What does family mean to you? Share your story in the comments below.